Hey, welcome into the Mile High Football Podcast, brought to you by Ideal Home Loans. Great to be with you guys again. The Broncos just finished up a 3-day mandatory minicamp, and I found it really intriguing. Several things that were said coming out of this minicamp. One, Sean Payton, and the way he has tried to create culture. You know, culture is not one of those things where you say, hey, we're going to have great culture, boom, and it's done. It's something that's worked on day in, day out. And I found it interesting that Mike Kliss, intrepid reporter here for 9 News and does stuff with our show and does stuff on the station, asked him a question about injuries. And Sean Payton just cut him off, respectfully cut him off and said, Mike, let me just tell you something right now. When I mentioned that Samaje Perine had a bruised thumb, he goes, that's about the most you're ever going to get out of me when it comes to injuries. So you can ask the question, but the odds are I'm not going to answer it. And so it's establishing, the field of play, establishing the rules, but basically saying those are questions that are off limits that I'm really never going to give you great insight to because I don't want our opponents to have great insight. And again, it's one of those things that you do to establish yourself as an organization. People always talk to me about being in the media now and, being on television shows and being on the radio and doing stuff like this. And, oh, you never said anything. You're such a hypocrite. When you played, you guys, were the orange hush, your offensive line. You never spoke to the media and blah, 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 blah. And now you're a hypocrite because this is what you do for a living. And I always say to people, that's incorrect. I used to speak to the media every day. It was just never on the record, right? I mean, we had a great relationship with the media, and we played with those guys all the time. And Adam Schefter was a beat reporter. ESPN's Adam Schefter was a beat reporter at the time. Adam and I were great friends back then. We're great friends today, but he just understood the game we were playing. And that's part of culture, and that's what Sean Payton is trying to create right now. It's a game. And that creates a locker room that everybody's in on it, and everybody's playing it, and everybody's enjoying that aspect of the way the organization is structured and the way we're going to play the game. And I think those things are good things. I also think Sean was happy, said he was happy with the effort and kind of where they are right now. But again, it comes down to what he's talked about, grade us on production when the season starts, not in the off season. You can't win in the off season. Now, moving on from Sean, I think one other thing that really struck me coming out of these mini camps or this mandatory mini camp was Kareem Jackson. When Kareem Jackson speaks, I tend to listen because that guy has been playing at an elite level for now going into his 14th season. Remember, he's a guy that transitioned from a superstar, all-star, all-pro type of cornerback to an all-pro type of safety. And he said this, coming out of minicamp, and I'll paraphrase, but he said, I've never been, and no disrespect to the other coaches I've played for, but I've never played for a coach with the attention to detail level that Sean Payton has and the football acumen that Sean Payton presents every day, how he stops practice and coaches things up, how he's got his finger on the pulse of every situation and every position that's being coached right now. And, you think about that and that statement, and sometimes you think, oh, that's hyperbole, and they always talk about how good the coaching staff is or how, refreshing this is or that is. But you think about that statement. Kareem Jackson came into the league under Gary Kubiak when Gary Kubiak was the head coach of the Houston Texans. And for him to say, man, this level of detail is next level, that says a ton because I know Gary Kubiak is a hell of a football coach and his attention to detail level is top notch. So I just think that there is an aspect to that really intrigues me about this football team. What does that mean? Well, ultimately, they're going to have to go out, they're going to have to execute, they're going to have to play well. But I will tell you this, one of the big question marks coming into the season is what will Russell Wilson be? Like, how will he adjust and how will he play going forward? And I will tell you this, all I can tell you is the times that I've spent with Sean and the times where Sean was leaving the Drew Brees era and moving on to the Jameis Winston era. Remember, Jameis Winston was a guy that threw 30 interceptions and turned the ball over on fumbles 9 times, had 39 turnovers in one season for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And he comes to New Orleans, he gets the starting job, goes 5-2 in the 7 games he starts, throws 14 touchdowns versus 3 interceptions. In the 13 games that he and Trevor Siemian started in the 2021 season, 25 touchdowns between the two of them, 6 interceptions. And those are 2 quote-unquote journeyman quarterbacks, to be sure. So you don't think that Russell Wilson is going to benefit from the coaching of Sean Payton? And the bottom line is this. When I talked to Sean Payton about Jameis Winston, he said, hey, man, if you throw 30 picks, there are a lot of dirty fingerprints on 30 picks. And that goes to coaching, play calling, all that stuff. And I'll never put my guy in a position to play that poorly. And, he's proven it time and time again. So this should be a team that improves dramatically from a coaching standpoint, a quarterback play standpoint, because he's going to mitigate potential disasters before they happen, not after they happen. So he's going to make sure that he gives Russell Wilson a game plan that he can execute that will eliminate some of the mistakes that we saw last year and put him in the best position to win. For one, I really believe that this team is going to be fighting for 10 to 11 wins. Somewhere in that area, maybe 9, but there's going to be fighting at the end of the season. They're going to be relevant for a playoff berth, and that's in a conference, in a division with like 12 premier quarterbacks. So you think about that. That's the difference to me that coaching makes. So anyhow, really excited about the Broncos season. We'll keep hammering things through until training camp rolls around, and then it's going to be off to the races. For everybody involved in the Mile High Football Podcast, we truly appreciate you. For Ideal Home Loans, who presents this podcast, thank you so much for doing that, and we'll be back with you guys next week.